Good afternoon. Welcome to the work session for September the 3rd. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Spence for the items of information.
All right, first of all, we have we have created an organizational chart, different than the previous years. We still have not replaced the one assistant superintendent position, but we took it off and divided up those responsibilities. The one thing different about this organizational chart, if you'll maybe open it up a little bit, and you can find this on our website, is you can hit a tab and it goes to, and it tells you just a few things that each of the people do. That's one thing I wanted to see, is I wanted to know so that we weren't duplicating responsibilities, so that we knew what everyone did that's in an administrative position. And so you can just see that and play with it all you want to, but it will be posted on our website for all to see. Any questions about the organizational chart and why we did it a certain way or anything? One thing that is different is the middle school and high school principals report straight to me. The elementary principals still report to me, but they report directly to Sung Hee. And I will be doing the evaluations for the middle and high school principals.
Any other big changes? Anything else?
No, I moved Brittany Tate under Michelle Seals. But I don't think, Valerie, were there any other big changes?
I'm just special ed moved.
Yeah. Yeah, special ed now falls under Dr. Whitehead because she has a degree in special education.
It's helpful.
Well,
And Rod Ellis is now under you, which is
Rod Ellis and Steve Waters report directly to me.
Is there a plan to put contact information in the link, in the hyperlink too?
Okay. I guess we can do that, but I'm going to show you something in just a second that's going to take care of that too.
Yeah, I think I know
Yeah.
what's coming. Okay.
Any other questions about the organizational chart?
How come I got arrows by my name? Y'all trying to tell me something? I got moving forward instead of out.
We'll fix it.
So, just check.
All right.
And how sneaky y'all are.
And Dr. Whitehead is also the COVID-19 specialist. That's that's what she's dealing with. Go to the next thing is our one of the things that the principals stated to me when I sent out the first survey was to improve communication. Who does what? Who do I call? And so this tells if there's pretty much anything we could think of. If the principals or someone needs something, this is who you call. And so we have their contact information down, and we have the type of inquiry that you may need. So, of course, this could be a working list that we could, once we see if there's something we're missing, we could certainly add to it. Any questions there? All right, next up, we have Dr. Whitehead. We're going to review our school startup procedures and the documents that we have. It's just so everyone knows what page we're on, and so we're all on the same page when people call, because we're getting a lot of calls these days.
So good afternoon, and I know you all are getting calls as well, so we definitely appreciate the support and just directing calls if we can help answer questions, certainly. I did include as one of the attachments the latest executive order, which does continue to have the language that we saw previously, and this is the excerpt that deals specifically with education and children, but a reminder on that next page section that goes up under the that second section you see right there. It says it's further ordered that school districts shall implement measures that include screening and evaluating workers and students who exhibit symptoms of COVID-19 and requiring workers and students who exhibit symptoms of COVID-19 to not to report to school and to seek medical attention. So one of the questions that we're getting from parents as well as some of the medical community is why we are sending them to the doctor if they are showing any of those symptoms. And so part of that originates out of this executive order that we have. And then the other additional guidance that we have that's also attached there is the guidance for Georgia K-12 schools and school-based programs. And trying to see which one that one probably is.
Georgia Department of Public
Yes,
Health.
I think that's probably it. Yes, so this lengthy document is some additional guidance, and within this, it also repeats the necessity to identify individuals who need to be sent home based on symptoms. And the symptoms checklist is on, begins on what would be page 33, I think, Chris, when we look at that. And there are questions that would have to be answered, so maybe 30, yeah, the one right above. So our first question, obviously, is, have you had close contact with anyone with COVID, or have you been advised to quarantine? And obviously, if the question is yes, then the child should not be at school, and the child can return 14 days after the last time they were in close contact with someone with COVID-19. But I'll talk about a few exceptions to the 14-day rule in just a moment related to that. Number two, do any of the children that we're seeing have any of these symptoms? And you'll see that it's quite a lengthy list. And some of these seem like minor illness issues if we look at them in any other time of life other than during this pandemic. And it says over on the right in red that if a child has any of these symptoms, they should go home, stay away from other people, and the family member should call the child's health care provider. So again, you'll see that some of these seem like mild issues, and I guess one of the unfortunate side effects of being the central contact for the system is that I can tell you that we have children and staff members in our system who have exhibited only one of these symptoms, and yet they have then eventually tested positive for COVID. So to think that it would have to be multiple symptoms to send someone home wouldn't match with the reality of what we're seeing in the schools. We do understand it's a frustration when parents get a call and then the parent gets to the school and the child says, well, I just have a headache or I just have an upset stomach. And then to later find out that those students have tested positive. So that is why we are calling to send students home with any of these symptoms. And then additionally, the next page talks about returning to school. And you'll see that in order to return to school, the original guidance has been that if we're sending them home with any of these symptoms, they would be home for 10 days since they first had the symptoms. 24 hours since they've had a fever without the use of fever-reducing medication, and at least 24 hours before the symptoms have improved, since the symptoms have improved, to be able to return. The one place where we've had a little caveat is that first line in red after that. And it says if a child has had a negative COVID-19 test, they can return to school once there's no fever without the use of fever-reducing medications and they have felt well for 24 hours. So as we're sending them to seek medical attention, if the parent would like for the child to return before the end of that 10-day isolation period, that's where the negative COVID test is coming into play. And so we have parents who want their children to hopefully come back before the 10-day isolation. So they are going to their medical provider and then either requesting a COVID test there or going to the health department. The health department has been doing same-day scheduling, and right now the results are coming back next day, or if it's late in the day, the morning after is what we're seeing in response to that. So I realize many of you have been getting those calls and questions about why that is the case, because otherwise we're not requesting testing. If the parent chooses that the child will just be out for the 10 days, there's no requirement to test. It's only if they want them to shorten that isolation period.
But, like, so, but if a child is sent home because of direct contact and they weren't positive, a negative test isn't gonna help them, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
Because that's
yes,
my situation. I'm not gonna get Billy tested because he's,
that's
he
right,
may not have gotten it yet.
right. And so
It's a
the,
little wonky, sounding, but I understand it, but it's just,
yes.
the kids that aren't positive have to stay out longer than the kids that test positive. And it's just,
Right, and so the kind of defining, kind of like we did the definitions of virtual and distance learning, there's a separation, isolation, and quarantine. So isolation is for those people that have either tested positive or have symptoms. And so they are operating on a 10-day calendar, either 10 days from the date that they test positive, not the day they get the results, but the day they actually took the test, or 10 days from the onset of symptoms. And so they're on a 10-day calendar for isolation. The quarantine is a 14-day observation period because within that 14 days they could develop symptoms or have enough incubation time that they develop the illness. And so that's why that time period is longer. The 10-day isolation can't be shortened if there's a known exposure. So that option to come back early from a 10-day isolation is only if there's no known exposure to a confirmed case for COVID-19. And the other bit of information that we continue to learn things every day, but one of the things that we've learned over the past few days is that there are several labs that are offering a blood antibody test, and we cannot currently accept that as a negative test to come back to school. The type of test that we have to require is known as a PCR test. P as in Paul. And that type of test has been confirmed and approved by CDC and the Department of Public Health. There are a lot of variables related to the antibody test that make it an unreliable source for diagnosing acute COVID-19, which would mean a current infection of COVID-19. So again, we're trying as much as possible to get the information out as we learn it so that we don't set parents up for frustration. But sometimes it's not until we have a scenario before we send that forward and then we learn the additional information. So we definitely appreciate patience and understanding when we come forward with new information. The other piece that is kind of confusing, and that's probably an understatement, is when a person in the family tests positive and there are multiple siblings or multiple family members in the household. When someone tests positive and you can't isolate from that person, there's going to be continued contact with that person, then the people in the household are isolating with that person on their 10-day isolation. And then their 14-day quarantine begins. So if I have a sibling in my house that I can't disconnect from and that sibling has tested positive, I have to be home for the duration of my sibling's 10-day isolation from their positive test. And at the end of their 10 days, they're going to be going back to school. But then I have to start a 14-day quarantine because of the exposure time. Within that quarantine period, if I develop symptoms, then I move on to a 10-day calendar versus the 14-day. So if it's day 13 and I develop symptoms, I now add 10 days. So we have some students that could be on definitely a prolonged absence related on the situation at home. So one of the things that we're trying to also help educate our families on is that if a child has to go home or their child tests positive, that they do everything possible to try to isolate that family member so there's not continued contact with them, because it could definitely impact the amount of time that a child has to be out of school. And so, as I'm sure you're already picking up, there are so many scenarios and so many things that are happening, and the principals have been doing an amazing job of handling this at the school level, calling with questions. If it's not something we've seen before that I can't give them a response to, I'm immediately reaching out to DPH, and they're helping guide us so that we can then funnel the information back. But it really has been a learning curve and information intense, I will say. So I don't know if y'all have any questions specific to those pieces, because I think that's where we've seen the majority of questions.
Going to the ER. Sorry, go ahead. Going to the ER doesn't mean you're going to get a PCR test. Oh, maybe you said go there.
He's messing with you.
No, what, you see my mouth.
That's gone.
You better go before I go.
Are you sure?
Oh,
Paper, rock, scissors. Let's go, guys. The PCR test at the hospital is not necessarily run on every single person who comes in. That's the quicker, not the quickest, but the quicker test. If a person comes in and has just one of these symptoms and the doctor says, well, we'll go ahead and test you for COVID, but they'll send it out to Quest, which could be the 10 days are going to be out anyway. So just because you go to the emergency department doesn't mean you're going to get a quick test.
Right.
The family people need to kind of know that, because, and if you don't have symptoms, we don't do it. So you go, well, why don't they do that? There's a shortage of tests, especially the rapids. We use the rapids on ICU or somebody who's about to have a emergency surgery or something, because we literally report every single morning how many we have. And you have to go through the house manager in order to even get the rapid test to begin with, even if a doctor orders it. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to people or sending them somewhere. Send them to the health department. The health department will get it done quicker and free. So anyway, just thought I'd share that.
Any other questions with our procedures here? It's sad when a kid is doing everything they're supposed to be doing, and just because they're sitting next to someone, they have to go home. And it's really sad that we have to tell them that. I've never seen anything like it. We're trying to do the best we can.
I think what's going to be a bigger, or I say something that we're going to need to look at, or what may not be considered as fair, is if a kid is out for 14 days, they come back in, and next thing in block 2, another person's there. So a
Yes.
kid or a student could potentially be out the whole semester just because of where they sit. And we're wearing masks because we didn't want to spread it. And even though we're within 6 feet, we've got our mask on, which is what the guidelines say. This will stop it, or it'll help from spread it. I wish there's something that DPH or someone would do to say, we're doing our best, we've required masks, give us a little leeway. And I think a good way to test this will possibly be whenever the kids come back from the first quarantine,
Yes.
and see, and there may be some numbers that we could even share with the governor, with DPH, say, listen, we're doing this. I'm sure you're already.
Well, no, I was going to say, about 3 days ago, I sent that question forward to say, if our data sets come back, that the students that we're quarantining that don't have any other known exposure, because we all know we have students that we're quarantining, but they also have social exposures. And so if we can show in our data that the students we're sending home on quarantine that don't have other exposures aren't ending up sick, can we then see some lenience in the distance that we're having to include for our quarantine? I've been told that we can expect that that's going to be a discussion that's happening at the state. So, yes.
That'll definitely help.
And then I think one of the things Dr. Spence and I've talked about, and I've talked about with Mr. Blackstone yesterday from another situation, is trying to look at being strategic with seating charts so that we can try to minimize as much as possible a student being quarantined twice, because we definitely want to avoid that as well.
It's tough.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next, I have Mr. Boudreau with the facilities update.
So, Dr. Whitehead, just one thing real quick. I don't know if I'm sure we may have, but I've got, John English is at the University of Georgia right now, so they sent out some guidelines for this coming weekend, like, be smart. It's a holiday weekend, but, don't set us back. And that's a little frustrating for me because this whole summer, we sat at home,
Right.
and so the minute we come back, my son gets quarantined because, people were traveling to the community, but people were traveling outside the community as well, so I don't know if there's something we need to send out to parents saying, even if it's just a one call or whatever, please, please continue, whatever you do this holiday weekend, be smart. So we've got to just stay the course, I totally agree, but we don't need to make it worse. We've got to just kind of suck it up and grin and bear it for a little while and make some sacrifices so we don't keep having the same kids out 14 days, 10 days, 14 days, 10 days for the rest of the year.
We can do that.
You know,
Yeah.
just something
I
like
think some of the principals were already planning on doing that.
that. Okay, okay,
We can
Yeah.
do that.
thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, I'll start off with Glynn Academy Science Building. Science Building is substantially complete. We have a few little closeout items to finalize as far as training and some paperwork, but we should wrap that up. We should be able to close this out by the 1st of November, I would think. So, looking good there. The auxiliary gym, or what we call the GA Physical Education Edition, they got the last portable out today, so we're on schedule as far as making way for the construction to start or the site work to start. We sat with the contractor today and worked out a schedule to get the bidding done. We should have bids to you, or guaranteed maximum price, in November, which will allow us to move forward with site work and ordering materials, and it's going to be a pretty tight schedule on that little building, so that's doing well. Altama Elementary School, everything's going along really well. We have asked them for an updated, more detailed schedule. Even though it's going well, it's starting to sneak up on us, so we're going to try to start tracking that a little bit closer. But overall, it's been a really good project and no issues to really discuss there. Center for the Arts, we had another meeting yesterday. Somebody might want to speak to that other than me. Andy?
Well, it was Tuesday and it was productive. We're going to meet again. We shared some things back and forth, and I would call it productive. But nothing really new to report. Would you say that's a
No,
fair
it was a
assessment?
productive meeting, but I think we're starting to agree on some things. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
But it was productive, yes.
All right.
And I was on my best behavior.
You did well. I'm proud of you.
Okay, East Bluffs 4, we had another meeting with the Chamber of Commerce folks on, what day was it?
Monday.
Monday. And I don't know, you want to update on how things went?
Mr. Mansell, Mr. Edgy, and Mr. Boudreaux and myself met with the people from the Chamber of Commerce, and we've come up with some bullet points on things that we want to showcase with the new East Bluffs.
All right, so that's looking positive as well from their standpoint. Since I'm here, can we swap, was it okay if swap E and F while I finish up? All right, what we have is our capital outlay application for fiscal year 2022. And what I've done is I've taken this is actually our East Bluffs 4 list, and made some extra columns there to the right that show what each project would earn in entitlement for, for this application. As you can see, can you zoom in a little bit, Chris? Okay, you can see there where I've got a priority rank on the right. And anyway, long story short, we're going to be asking for $5,734,698, and it's been approved. Once the board approves it next Tuesday, the superintendent and the board chair will sign the application, and it'll start the process. But this has been approved at the state DOE level. Some pretty good money there.
Can I talk back to East Bluffs real quick, just for a quick point?
Sure.
We kind of go through this every time we do it, but I don't know if it needs to be this formal, but I don't know if Andy, if you need to get with Brittany or Dr. Spence or whatever, and even if we put out a flyer that says, we need to somehow get out the do's and don'ts of East Bluffs marketing. So, PTAs don't make copies on Board of Education machines and sit and fold. I mean, just to refresh everybody's memory so we don't get caught up in something.
I've had that discussion with Dr. Spence about the do's and don'ts, and obviously the school system as a system cannot put anything out. So they're not going to.
Okay.
PTAs, of course. You board members, absolutely. Dr. Spence, to the degree that he talks about the projects and not the politics. Correct?
That's correct.
You can always talk about what the project list is, but you don't give an opinion as to the vote. But board members, you can give all the
Sure.
opinions you'd like to.
So can PTAs send a flyer home, you know?
Not with kids.
Well, let me finish my question, because let's say you make copies at Staples, just like we do for PAX Karate and the million other things we get. And I'm not saying we need to, but you're saying PTA, that's about the only way they communicate. I mean, I know they have websites and Facebook pages and stuff, but we just need to be careful that they don't think just because they make copies off-site that they can send home in folders or whatever, or you know, clarify
The
that.
best
I'm not-
practice has always been at the evening. Now, again, I don't know if we're going to have PTA meetings between now and November.
Sure.
But the best practice was handing out things in the evening at the PTA meetings. But we don't know if we're going to have evening PTA meetings. So it's fluid. But the point is, we can't break the law. That's the bottom line. And we don't want to be accused of breaking the law.
I think to Mike's point, he just wants it to be re-reviewed by everybody.
Sure. It will
Which is a
get
good
done.
And
idea.
especially, you remember the issue that happened in Brunswick High, my dad was involved in, Howard was
Yeah.
there, where teachers felt like they had to attend a staff meeting where East Bluff was pitched, you know,
That
so to
will
say.
not
So we
happen.
gotta just kinda,
Yeah.
if there's any question, just don't do it, you know.
Thank you, Al.
All right, next is good report. Kevin?
Hopefully it's a good one.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right, guys. All right, everybody should have a copy. On the first page, as Al indicated, you'll see St. Simon's fencing and Glynn Academy re-roofing are moved up into the completed project area. They were completed with some of East Splash 2 funds. There's still some pending state receipts in full for that, and some of the remainder will be used on the Greer-Sotillo Marsh roof project, and then E2 will be completely closed out. That's what's expected there. If we move forward to page 2, you'll take a note there that Ed O'Miller renovations, along with the Glynn Academy Science, will move up into the completed projects next month. Everything's been on track just fine with the activities in East Splash 3. On page 3, great news is that once again, the month of August has proven to do very well, providing more than $600,000 above budget. It's turned out to be the number 3 month in history of East Splash here, only second to July, the previous month this year, as well as August of last year, which was 2019, which was number 2 for the duration in the last 15 years. And so the funds continue to work in very well there. And if we move to page 4, we see the graph of the receipt with 5 months ago, where everything seems to be allowing us to meet our goals of this East Splash program. And let me know if you guys have any questions.
Any questions, guys? Thank you, sir.
All right, great, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin, appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot.
See you there. See ya.
All right. You're zooming that, dude.
So at the board meeting, we're going to propose 3 action items. And first, we're going to start with Ms. Preston.
Actually, the very first,
Is
so you
Ms.
want me to do B
Peacock.
and C?
You want to do A and C? You
What
want me-
about staffing? You're talking about staffing in the executive session?
Yes.
Okay. B is the G Suite Enterprise for Education. And up until this year, being able to do meetings with Google Meet and live stream was free, and now it's not. So that's what we're using with all of our students. So we have to subscribe I can't read the dollar amount. I think it was $32,160. So the free stuff, I think, expires at the end of September, maybe. Yeah, September 30. We'll no longer be allowed access to those advantaged features, which we are using every day now. Any questions on that? That comes out of the technology budget. And then the other thing I have is I need to get the board to approve this form that the state uses when you close out your state-funded projects, and the two roofs, one on Greer and one on Satilla Marsh. I need to get that approved by the board Tuesday so that we can draw down the 10% of remaining state funds out there. Basically says you've paid all your bills on those projects. And that's
Any
it.
questions on those two? Want to bring Laura in?
Okay.
I'll get back to it.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. So I've never done this before with all of you, so do I just start talking or?
Yep.
You do?
Okay.
Your show.
All right, so I am here today. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Lori Peacock. I am the new CEO and CTAE director for the school district. I am just finishing week 4 of employment with the district, and I have lived here just a little over 2 months. I moved here from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that's me. What I need from you tonight is for you to approve the Carl Perkins grant. I don't know what you're looking at, but I did send a report that looks like this. And then there was also a letter that we received from Godot on what our Carl Perkins funding is for the year.
Pull up the other one. The one on the right. Yeah, go back to the. That's it. Scroll down.
So the district this year is receiving, for Carl Perkins improvement, $146,808, or excuse me, $141,699. That's a difference of $5,000 from what we received last year. While the state itself received the same amount of money from the federal Carl Perkins grant, more school districts asked for funding this year, so therefore there is a decrease in our overall funding. We also receive funding from the state for extended day, extended year, apprenticeship, and supervision. So, and that is an additional total of $133,321 for Carl Perkins. Dr. Spence, is there something more I should be saying?
No.
Okay.
No.
We also have a line item for CTAE for the CARES Act funding, but right now that is on hold until the information comes back from private schools to see whether or not they want to be part of this funding as well. So we won't know that probably until mid-October. When you think about the Carl Perkins grant, one of the things that was required in Perkins 5 this year was a comprehensive local needs assessment, also known as a CLNA. The reason for that is that any money spent for Perkins needs to align back to your comprehensive local needs assessment. And that was based on 6 elements. The first element was data. And a lot of that was labor market data. What does it look like right now in Glynn County and in the region, and what is the anticipated trends for the labor market on a going forward basis? We also needed to spend time talking with and getting input from our stakeholders, which is business, industry, community-based organizations, students, and parents. In addition to that, we also looked at student performance, size, scope, and quality of our current pathways, pathway programs of study implementation, recruitment, retention, and professional development, and equity and access. So based on that, I did provide an overview of the 5 overarching needs that we will be focusing on this year as it aligns to our Carl Perkins funding. Do you need me to read those, or do you have those?
It should be in the, which one is it? The Carl Perkins, the one, hit that, the Carl Perkins funding.
Nope, not that one. Okay. Well, I'll make sure that I get it to Carl, and you will all have it. I can give you, there's 5 overarching needs. One is to increase the number of students with disabilities, or those students who are economically disadvantaged, involved in CTSOs, which are Career Technical Student Organizations. So that is overarching need 1. Overarching need 2 is to increase the number of students that are identified and involved in pathways that are non-traditional for their gender. And that is really a key factor. So for an example, 1.2 of the students enrolled in welding, auto, machining, and engineering identify as female. So in our district, there are a lot of young men in those areas, but not many women. And for students identifying as male, less than 1% are enrolled in healthcare-related pathways, which are considered non-traditional occupations for men. Overarching need number 3 is the number of students entering trades, culinary, and hospitality pathways is not sufficient to fill the local employment needs, especially in this area where there is a lot of tourism and a lot of manufacturing. Overarching need number 4 is 13% of work-based learning students are not placed in meaningful employment experiences. So those are experiences that are aligned to where their career interests are. And then the last one is increasing the number of juniors and seniors who earn a credential of value. One of the things that we're really going to be focusing on is dual enrollment to support that goal. Do you have any questions? All right, and then, and then Dr. Spence had asked me to share with you 3 goals. I want to give the disclaimer that these could change, but after a month with the district and the research that I did on the district before I moved down here, my 3 goals include, first of all, listen, learn, and understand. I want to honor the work that has been done to this point within the school district, but then also look for gaps, do a SWOT analysis, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, align that to the comprehensive local needs assessment, and then work with the board, not only this board, but the foundation board, on developing a strategic plan. My second goal is to, as I already mentioned, work on dual enrollment programming to continue to provide for our students at value add. So not only graduating with a high school diploma, but also potentially with college credits or some other kind of industry certification. And then the third one is really starting to focus on middle schools as a place to start building our future students in our career pathways. I think, in my opinion, middle school is that sweet spot. Waiting till 9th or 10th grade to get kids aware and involved in any kind of career-related experiences sometimes can be a little too late. So to really start focusing on our middle school students. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. Peacock?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that was easy. Thank you.
There was one thing I skipped over. Al, let's get that Al back in here. with staffing, Al mentioned this the other day, and I thought I would talk to you guys about it. We're having problems when we have a substitute bus driver or a substitute cafeteria worker or a substitute custodian. The pay is $8 an hour. So if we were going to try to hire that person, the time that it takes between them being a substitute, which we can bring them in as a substitute, and them getting approved by the board, could be a month. Well, the actual pay for them is $10 to $11 an hour. That's a big difference for someone making $8 an hour. And so we were going to ask if we could consider, if we know we're going to hire them, going ahead and paying them what we're going to pay them when we do hire them. If we know that if they've already had their background check and we know we're going to hire them, it's just a matter of them being approved by you guys. Because those people, if they're only making $8 an hour and they could be making 11, they're going to go get another job before we can get them to you, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So.
And we're hurting badly for custodians. They're getting worked to death. They're dropping like flies, and we need help in the worst kind of way. And, with the current situation, a lot of this gets down to this support staff. I mean, we need to give them all the help we can, I think, and this would help us actually get our numbers up to where we can get a little more done, be a little more successful.
We're not asking, I guess this is not something you guys need to vote on, just kind of get your opinion on it. We can go ahead and pay them what they would make while we're waiting on you to approve them, but they're a substitute.
Al, you've been finding people leaving because of that? And substitutes?
Well, we can't get them, we're losing people for all kind of reasons. I mean,
Right.
they've never worked this hard in their whole life to begin with. Plus the people that we do attract, by the time, they get their background check and they have to wait a month, they've gone off and found another job. So what we'd like to do is get them their background check, start them as soon as that's approved, and pay them wherever they're going to fall on the pay schedule. And while they're
Instead of paying them a
pre-approved.
sub-pay, waiting on them to get approved.
You just fast track it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to come to you, but we're just going to pay them what they would be paid instead of what they would be paid as a sub.
They won't start till after the background check, right?
It'd be subjected to it back. We won't start them without a background check.
Dr. Cole started this when we went to just the 2 meetings a month, the work session and the board meeting. And it's also affecting our food service workers. They're doing the same thing. They don't want to wait around for 3-4 weeks to be board approved. It only makes sense pay.
Does anyone have a problem with that?
No.
Good, thank you. That I think is going to help a tremendous
guys.
amount. Thank you.
That's all I have.
But just impacting, food service too. I mean, there's nothing to say we can't vote at a work session. I mean, we don't generally
No,
do it.
right.
If we need to do personnel twice a month, just personnel, then,
It's not,
you know what I mean?
yeah, it's the problem. The problem is that the difference between, I was telling somebody the other day, the difference between $8 an hour and $11 an hour is huge when you're making $8 an hour. And we can pay them $8 an hour after they get the background check to work as a sub waiting on it. It's just, if we could just go ahead and pay them the $10 or $11 an hour while we're waiting on you to approve them, they can still be a sub. We're just paying them what they would make. We know we're going to hire them as long as you guys approve it. So that's what I'm asking. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, any other? Anything else we need to add or anything else to think of? We'll, executive session, I know we have some land to discuss. Personnel, obviously, any legal matters or?
Not that I'm aware of, but subject to any questions the board might have.
Okay, so we'll go in for land, legal, and personnel. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for land, legal, and personnel.
So moved.
Moved by Reverend Bobbitt. You got a second?
A second.
Ms. Sams, all those in favor? Unanimous at 5:14. I'll just shut the doors, we'll stay in here.
Morning, Deb.
You'll take us offline. return or open session. So,
Second.
Mr. Mansell and Reverend Bobbitt with the second. All those in favor? 6-0. From Dr. Jurgen is not here. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Bobbitt, second. Can I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Sam? All those in favor? We are adjourned at 5:51.
I want to talk to you about something.